Evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have RDV and Professor Pixel. We're covering Denzel Washington as we're on a Denzel Washington rant going on and on. Who doesn't love Denzel? We are covering an often overlooked film of his from 1998. And of course, I'm talking about the film that makes sure we all have time on our side to sit down and watch and talk about it tonight with you and all the other Denzel Washington fans out there. And of course, that movie is called Fallen. Gentlemen, I will start off by saying that when this movie came out, I did not realize at the time that Denzel had actually turned down one of the main roles in Seven, and that was one of the few films I think he actually regretted being a part of. And RDV, you and I last week talked about another often overlooked movie of his that we thought was pretty good, for what it was. Now, it was The Bone Collector that came out in 99. So to me, this actually came out before it.
Yep.
And I think this is part of the Denzel Washington penance kind of films thing for 2 or 3 films he was in because he didn't do it. But overall, I remember going to see Fallen at the time. This is when the internet was really starting to crank up. Secrets of movies and spoilers were only starting to come out a little bit, and you had to know the sites and go check them out. And with Fallen, you didn't know what the hook was at the end. You didn't get it. And since everybody I know loves Denzel and just how he is, you didn't realize you got Denzel'd at the end. Or some people thought it was a bit of a schmoz ending with the way they did it with the cat, which we'll get to too. But I'll just start off by saying, if you haven't seen this movie, don't read about it. Go watch it. Denzel's fantastic. I got to say, John Goodman's fantastic. There's some really good other side actors in here, too. This is a fun movie to watch. Enjoy. The ending is absurd, which I love because they went for it. So it may be hit or miss for some people. But for me, I really enjoyed it. I don't care that it's 2 hours long. It has a sense of dread to it, and it's got Denzel in the vehicle for it. I think it's a great thriller-type movie. Enjoyed it a lot. RDV, let's start with you. What are your initial impressions of Fallen starring Denzel Washington?
This is his best movie.
You think so?
I think so.
Tell us why.
Because after this, he went on fire. Man on fire? That was horrible. No, the reason I like this because you had to start sort of casting here. This led to The Bone Collector, but this is like, to me, the Denzel that I grew up watching, as far as films go. Him playing a cop, him having to figure out what's really going on. You know, the very beginning of this movie, man, you have Elias Cotiez. He's the guy who's going to be, he's the killer that's going to be executed. And he's like, see you around next time. And he's like, he's just singing "Time Is on My Side." It's like that whole song that you got the Rolling Stones. That is just probably the best opening to a movie I've ever seen.
It's a nice hook.
Just the whole fact, this is about how do you stop a killer that you can't kill. Like the whole concept of that. This to me is like I know you don't like supernatural paranormal stuff, but this was kind of cool because this is like, how do you stop a demon that's going around and anybody can go to anybody just by touch? And as Denzel sees this, he's like even questioning himself. It's like he's afraid to touch anybody. He doesn't know who is this Azazel. He doesn't know who is who. It's just like it becomes one of those paranoia movies. It's like, who can he trust? And Denzel has always been a phenomenal actor. Yeah. So to put this on his shoulders, no one else could have done this. Sorry, I don't. And you have John Goodman here too as his buddy cop, and Donald Sutherland as lieutenant. It's just I just love the whole entire the concept, the premise of this. And people are questioning him, and he's working on this. He finds out more information about this. There's more killings before all this stuff. It's just like the whole you see when he finds out the whole bigger picture. It's like you're riding up to the very end. You're at your seat. You're like, how is this going to end? Obviously he can't shoot the person because if he shoots the person, he touches another person, it can go into another person right away. And that scene, there's a scene in here in the I always remember that scene. They're in the cop shop, at the district. Yep. Right, anyway, and they all start singing a song as he passes to each other. It's like, time is on my side. Each person, as it touches them, you bump into a person, they continue the lyric. And it's so well done. It's so choreography, where they actually get it done smoothly, Like I said, I just love this movie.
The,
Go ahead,
All right, so
Go ahead,
well,
Pixel.
glad that you really. I didn't realize it was your favorite there too, Pixel. Had you had seen this movie before, but you obviously rewatched it for tonight's exposition that we're having on here too. What's your initial take on this film?
there are two ways to watch it: the first time you watch it, and the second time you watch it. And we should go ahead and say right now, while we're talking about scenes, spoilers. Everybody should watch this movie on their own. And so if you have not seen it, stop watching the video, go watch the movie, come back, because this movie is so damn good. This is, in fact, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's really a crime.
Those are strong words. Wow.
Yeah. I want to say, as much as me and Pixel love this, the movie was a flop.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which I don't believe. I can't believe how it'd be. But then I
will say this about it being a flop. I went and I saw it in the theater, and it was only maybe half full, and it was hardcore Denzel fans. And James Gandolfini's in here as well too. You know, so and he was on Up and Coming with Sopranos at this time too. So, like I said, great cast. But I think one of the things too, I will have to say that if you didn't live it, it's hard to express how this was actually a thing in the subconscious of pop culture at the time, even though it seems kind of silly. But religiously speaking, you had still in the 80s and even to some extent today, hardcore religious people coming out and being against Dungeons and Dragons and superheroes and supervillains, anything that's, you know, what might be considered not Christian. And so to have, you know, Catholics always cornered the market on movies that involve stuff like that. And this movie does that in its own way. And so I think that coming up to the year 2000, there was this sense of dread, of paranoia that what's going to happen with the year 2000. And even Chris Jericho back in his WCW days, even though he's now with AEW, he got really popular for being a conspiracy guy, basically saying, hey, you know, I'm the millennial man because bad things are going to happen at the millennium, because what's going to happen when computer digits don't roll over, because a lot of stuff was analog, some stuff was digital, but everybody thought that come 2000 things were going to turn over, and it was a sign of the apocalypse. And there's all these things here too, so there's definitely this end of the world spiritual thing getting close to the year 2000. And to see, to your point, RDV, Denzel being the guy that we love and we trust, he is the kind of guy that is like a hero that can bear this burden without being a complete schlub, and you get the sense that the weight of all this is on his shoulders, and we want to see how somebody is honorable, for lack of a better word, that he can be, and actually he's believable that way as an actor can be. And that's one thing that adds to it. But yes, at the time it was a flop, and I think a lot of people were turned off by Denzel Washington and supernatural stuff. It just didn't really seem to make sense, because Fallen was kind of dark for its time, but there wasn't a lot out there, although it was starting to get glamorized with serial killer movies, and that stuff was getting sexualized and being thought of as a really neat thing rather than being toned down. But yeah, definitely it did flop. People didn't like it, and honestly, people did not like one specific thing about the ending, which I'll hold off on to, and also people did not like the whole time is on my side. They felt it was done a little too much.
I do hear you, and I know somebody who is pretty much exactly like that, saying that in the exact opposite opinion, that they never want to see it again, that it's horrible. But I can't see it that way because of just how perfect this film is to me. And the scene that RDV mentioned in the police station, that is one of my favorites. But also the chase scene with the woman in here named Greta.
Yes.
The chase scene in that, when you're shooting and showing how he's touching every other person to try to get to her, it's just fantastic. Then he pushes himself through a window, and it looks like he's about to get her as the taxi cab drives off. It's just so intense. Oh, I cannot.
And it's, you know what's really funny about this is that this came out in January of 1998, and not even a couple months later. I'd say about 8 or 9 months later, in October, the series Charm came out, and that was all supernatural. No one cared about that. It's just funny how things change on a dime. You know, it's like,
I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer was already on at this time as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it takes a serious subject matter, which when people don't do a lot with, and then all of a sudden, hey, they've got gold on their hands. It's unexplored territory. We can talk about Hannibal Lecter. That goes as far back in terms of TV. There was a TV movie with Brian Cox as to Hannibal Lecter, and there's a lot of people that argue he was much better than even the film version of Hannibal Lecter. And now we get nothing but serial killers and Satan being cute, 150-pound skinny guys and stuff, and just disgusting. But you're absolutely right. You know, you go from this dark, brooding material to, hey, we're charmed, we're witches. You know, it's okay to be satanic as long as, you know, we're cute, you know, looking girls and ha ha ha, you know, YOLO and everything else that's been apparent for 20 years now. But yeah, this takes on a Seattle kind of theme in a sense that there's a lot of rain in the movie. There's a lot of gloominess outside. There's a lot of people not frowning, but not smiling. And John Goodman is somebody we've talked about here on the Extreme Movie Show and films like Arachnophobia and what about how awesome he is. But at heart, as guys at the very least, we love detective work that's not over the top kind of serial stuff on television. Here, they're just kind of investigating just some nonsense. The serial killer was babbling there, and they're watching the video, and they realize it's this old Aramaic, I think, type language, and they're realizing what it means, and they're having to go through all this stuff, and they realize it's probably something bigger to it, and it ties into something. And at the time you're watching, you're like, okay, where is this taking me? What's going on? And then when you find out about halfway through this movie, let's just say, that it's really going to be Denzel versus the world, and he's paranoid, there's no better feeling. This movie does do a great job, like you guys were talking about with your favorite scenes here, of showing you how it works rather than letting people in the movie explain it to you. My one favorite scene is when he's actually out there on the road, and I'm going to call it the devil vision, where the screen goes kind of a little whatever, and you realize that's just him in slow motion trying to check things out. And like you said, where people are touching each other, and you can see, you know,
how he just changes
spirit going through each person. And I think, you know what, if you're an actor and you're only seen as 30 seconds on screen here, walking across, talking to somebody, and you get a chance to do like that, whether it's to sing a little bit of Time Is on My Side or just give them a look or leer, it's frightening, and it is done so well, and it's not campy. This is a movie that, if you know, Pixel, I want to go back to your comment about if you see it a second time after watching it a first time, does your opinion change on it? I still enjoy it, and I think my only gripe would be one minor thing at the end, but I love the fact that Denzel's character, you hear Denzel's voice doing a bunch of voiceovers occasionally, because usually the problem with voiceover work is you overdo it too much and you explain too much. In this movie, you get just enough that pushes the narrative forward too, and you get to see Denzel turning and looking over his shoulder, you know, on a dark night, you know, with fog coming out and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, like I said, the paranoia is you feel what Denzel's feeling. You know, you're learning more about this. You know, for those who believe, because this has always been like one of those not lucrative, you know, but I've been like, you know, those questionable topics. Do demons exist? You know, and ghosts and stuff. You know, so. Because we've watched the horror movies and everybody's like, oh, it's, you know, far-fetched, but there are people who believe in this stuff. They've seen stuff. So something like this, you know, like seeing like this guy is seeing a fallen angel or a demon going past him, you know, do you imagine, it is creepy, you know, if that's out there, if you really do believe in that stuff, that's even creepier for you. See, watching a movie like this, because something like this could happen. Even though a lot of people said like, oh, that you could never, this would never happen. I wouldn't rule anything out. I'll just say that. Maybe I'm more open-minded, you know, or just more paranoid. But
well, let me bring this up though, because I think you bring up a good point, and that's this: is that, you know, at the time Twin Peaks had already run its course on television, and so that was kind of weird and quirky, and had a serial killer in it. You had X-Files coming up. You had a great spinoff show that was going on at this time now that was a very dark version of, say, the X-Files in some way, dealing with serial killers, called Millennium, that dealt with the end of the world, millennium, and religious type themes here. So it was definitely hardcore in there. When you guys were watching this film, did you guys, be honest here, did you think it was going to have a happy ending?
I'll go first, and I'll say it was 50-50, because, you know, how do you stop something? I figured he'd have to trap it himself, because you see, it goes, as soon as it touches something, and it goes to somebody, and there, how do you trap it? You know, it's become a trope now with a lot of these things where people sacrifice themselves because they know they have, in order to contain it, someone has to have a host. It's just because the costs. I've seen it. I've seen this, and I've also read about this in comic books too. You know, Vertigo's Hellblazer. There's been stuff like this where You know, that a demon and John had to trap. He lied to his friend, but he trapped in his friend's body. You know, yeah. It was just like I said. This movie was for Denzel Washington. I didn't see. I saw him in the Pelican Brief before this. You know, so coming in, it's a totally opposite movie, but you know, high intense. This was kind of more slower pace, but this was more detective work. And like I said, the religious aspect to it, you know, as someone I come from, somewhat religious background as far as, you know, Christianity and the family stuff, going to church, teaching about demons, fallen angels, and like, you know, that they kind of gave me more of a creep factor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as for someone who's an atheist doesn't believe anything, it's silly. It's just hogwash, you know. It's so that added to me a little bit. And plus, I'm watching these movies in the late '90s, man. I'm 1999 or '98 and all this stuff. I was in my mid-teens, late teens. So I understand more of it. I think I appreciate more of these. But the fact that people thought this was a flop or made it into a flop, it just shows you that people are stupid.
Well, I think people's tastes were changing too. You know, you had my generation, you know, not being young but not being old, and then you had younger people at the time like you. But Pixel, I wanted to ask you: did you think this was going to have a happy ending?
When I originally watched, I couldn't see how, but I had that bit of hope. And when we get to the end, well, I don't know if we can go ahead and talk about the end. Don't know if I want to save that conversation.
Let's do it.
Whenever he's there, he has the demon trapped, and it's actually in John Goodman. He struggles with John Goodman with the gun, and it goes against Azazel and shoots little Jonesy. John Goodman. He goes to the floor and he's laughing because he got him. Denzel got him. But he knows that once he's dead, he can go ahead and find a new body. Denzel's right there. And he says, in fact, well, I had to make sure that I got you in such a way that I had time to get away. And it seems like in that moment, he's going to go. But that's when he pulls out a pack of cigarettes and he takes a smoke and he just sits there. And he reveals that cigarettes kill, especially ones with poison in them. And that's when you can see the fear hit Azazel's face. And he's screaming, F you! And Denzel, he's poisoned himself. So there's not a happy ending here, but it looks like he's going to succeed.
Well, let's pause right there before the ending.
Pause on the pause.
This RDV. Pause on the pause. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, pause on the floor. Pause, will you? Go ahead, RDV.
Like I said, this is a movie that this is probably the best example of a '90s drama / a little bit of action, movie. If you, because '90s was famous with all the drama and all the movie stuff. This was right up there where, and then leading into next year, Bone Collector, which is not as good as this, but it was still a good movie. Like I said, this is Denzel's era right here, and then he went on to like a couple more movies, more hits, but nothing to me personally will never be as great as this movie. So I said the cast, the premise of it. The fact that he's going against something that that it's impossible to stop, unless you trap it in your body with no one else around, So, as soon as you find out that bit information, you're like, oh man, he's going on a suicide run here. It's like he's doing whatever he can to stop this. I'm thinking like, the rational part of my mind is like, you think there's only one Azazel? There's like a whole bunch of other ones, But yeah, this is and this is right when I was watching this movie. This is right before I started getting into comic books. So after this would led me into reading the Hellblazer books, which deals with demonology and all that stuff. So yeah, Denzel Washington being who he is, he really adds to the movie. John Goodman has kind of always been one of those. He's He's Roseanne's husband. So,
He's the kind of guy that you would believe would
Yeah.
not be the bad guy
Yeah.
in here.
Yep.
Just because of how he is. He's kind of like the reliable partner that
yeah,
doesn't.
the jolly guy.
He's believable. You're like, oh damn it, they got him. You know, they got
yeah,
John Goodman.
yeah. Like I said, like and then they give you just enough information. They give you the lore, the background about this, you know, this demon and all that stuff. You know, just enough where it's believable. You don't need to have. They don't feel bore you with so many detail, but just enough to like. So you learn about what it is. So he forms his plan. And you just watch this guy. It's like Pixel said, you get that sliver of hope. There's going to be a positive ending, but knowing the way this movie's been so far, you kind of doubt it. But you want to have that hope. And like I said, this from beginning to end, the very the beginning just always gets me. Whenever I hear the Rolling Stones, Time's on My Side, I think of it.
You think of this movie?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if you've seen it, which, you know, it's one of the ones that doesn't seem like it gets a lot of pub these days.
And
you know, well, you know, we'll finish up with this, you know, the ending, because we paused on the pause. So the idea here is that he knows what's going on, and the rule of the movie basically is okay, you might be outlandish, you might be dumb and stupid, but whatever the rules are of your universe, show me, you know, that the rules exist, that they don't get broken. So as a watcher, we don't get insulted by, you know, lazy writing or bad booking and that sort of stuff. And then here it's consistent because it starts off with Denzel with the voiceover saying that, you know, let me tell you about the time I almost died. And you see kind of like what we call this like circle situation where you start off with the end, then you go back to the beginning, you go through the whole story and conflict and whatever happens, and then you get back to where you started and then it plays out. That's something that wasn't used a lot necessarily in movies up to this point in the late 90s. We see it a lot more now, especially on television. And so at the very end, one of the smart things I think that played out was that, you know, while this movie may not have been executed the best, it's still enjoyable. You saw where the demon that Denzel didn't believe in, and Denzel almost had to be convinced that it, you know, by today's standards that it existed. He got played. The demon played him. He got people basically to make it look like he was the bad guy. So he was being forced to go down this lonely, heroic path he didn't necessarily want to go down. And when he confronts the demon at the end and John Goodman's body possessing him, and then he goes to kill himself, you can argue the religious aspect of that, which I'm not going to get into. He thinks he's got it, but I'm often reminded of pride being one of the 7 deadly sins, because he's sitting there in the snow, you know, outside the cabin there, it's dark, and then you hear pretty much almost the same kind of speech of Denzel saying, I told you at the beginning I was going to tell you about the time that I almost died. You see a cat come out, go next to one of the bodies, then starts running off with the demon vision, the predator vision. You realize, holy shit, because the demon only had like a few seconds, like a breath worth of time where somebody died to go into another body, that it went into the cat. And so the demon still lives and Denzel still dies at the end. It's all for nothing. But then you realize which really popped me, because I was like, oh, you fucker, you got me. And this was before the Sixth Sense, when everybody got pissed. Do you realize that the voiceover work from Denzel was actually the demon talking to you the whole time? And I loved it.
Yes.
I said, you know what? You effing got me, you friggin' film. I'm not going to be mad at you. It's not dumb. It's not stupid. My guard was down because it's Denzel and John Goodman, and then I saw what's going to happen. Donald Sutherland's played the paranoid guy and dumb guy in some sort of movies, and the bad guy, so I knew he was going to get got. That didn't worry about him. He was in the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the late 70s, and he was great in that. But I didn't care about him. But John Goodman, and then Denzel, you weren't Denzel, you were the demon. All right, take my money. I'll enjoy it. I don't care how sloppy the movie was. I really, really, really like that ending. So that's the big secret to the ending. Pixel, you're having a pixel-gasm about it.
Oh god. It is just so great, and that's why I said there's 2 ways to watch it. You watch it the first time, and you're like you said, your guard's down, you're taking it all in, and at the end, when you realize the demon's talking to you the whole time, then you watch it a second time, and you look at each line that he says, and it fits perfectly. There's no flaws. You know exactly what it is, and it's just so great. It shouldn't be this good, but it is.
Well, when you have in RDV, you might want to talk about this because we mentioned this before last week when we covered Bone Collector and some other movies that, the writing exists to flesh out the world and stuff. But sometimes when you get like an ending like this and you go back and rewatch it, all of a sudden, some of the things that they say, you go, oh, now I know why they're saying it. So it's like a different rewatch when you go to watch it a second time. How did you feel watching it again?
Honestly, there are parts that I forgot about because I remember the key parts. It's the parts where there's not really that much action or much going on storytelling. Those are the parts I kind of forgot about. But yeah, like I said, this is a movie I enjoy. Like it's just there's very few movies I can say that about. That I'll go back and be like, oh yeah, this movie is so great. I still like this better than the superhero movies. I don't care what Pixel says. I know you like the Avengers stuff. That's cool. That's what you like.
I never said I like those more than this. I said this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yes, but whenever I say things better than Avengers and all that stuff, you get mad. So, so anyway, yeah, like I said, I love Denzel Washington as far as when he does these early roles like this, and then the '90s, man, it's like. They're making movies based on what the internet might say. This is like the internet was around, they dial up, but not many people had it in their homes. It's accessible, so you got good stories or you got really bad stories. Nowadays, you just get like, okay, this is this agenda crap. This was actually like written good, solid writing all the way through. This is an action, not really like action, but it's more of a crime drama than in thriller. You said they adding a little bit of supernatural to this, what more can you ask for, man? It's like there was some little bit of jokes in here, but not like where it was like just makes it not serious,
right?
Yeah, and it's believable. Him being a person, he said he's a person he never really believed in God, and then seeing this thing is like you're like. Okay, maybe he's gonna live at the end, but no, he actually made the ultimate sacrifice. As a person, he realized if I don't do this, it's just gonna get through. The only thing about this, I'm kind of satisfied with the ending though, the fact that he died. He did all this, even though the demon, still moved on, because. Whether it was a cat or his body being eaten by rats or insects, the thing would have still moved on. You can't stop it. That's what you kind of learn from this. There's no really way you can slow something like this down, but you can't stop it.
Yeah, you can only hope to contain him.
Yep.
Well,
because he said time's on my side.
Well, the rule was that he had one breath, and so. If the cat wasn't there, then he wouldn't have had the time. Time would not have been on his side.
He could have
been on Denzel's side.
It could have been a mouse or a bird.
Well, yeah, but they would have had to get there within the time of one breath.
Yeah,
that's the rule.
We didn't see them, doesn't mean they're not there, bro.
Well, the thing is some people have got, I think, let down not because the demon escaped or whatever, which it has to, right? And you have to have the hero sacrifice, and otherwise you don't have a movie. It's the fact they're like, wait a minute, this cat came out of nowhere or something. But if it was just that, I think I'd have been a little pissed. But the fact that it was the demon the whole time talking about it, you're like, oh, he's telling me the whole story because it had already really happened. And I'm like, okay, I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Now, and we see Cat go in the house whenever Denzel first goes to the cabin.
Yes.
So we knew it was there.
It wasn't just a throw-in at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just glad there was no sequel.
Well, any other final thoughts, RDV?
Final thoughts is this: go watch this movie. This is probably a 9 out of 10 for me.
Nice. Pixel, any final thoughts from you?
This is just a great film. I don't see anything wrong with it, period. It is perfect in my mind.
My only complaint is that we didn't get more Hobbs on screen.
I have no complaints. This is a great movie. Go watch it now. And
yes, this is the movie that if you're on Twitter and when you see somebody's name trending and then you go, oh my God, did that person die, or what's going on with that person? You go and you click on it and you see the Denzel thing, like, you know, feeling relieved. This is the movie from where it comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, people are acting like it's a Denzel thing, like, where'd that come from? You know, it's from here, and it's kind of neat. I always think of this movie when that comes on too, because that's how it is. You go, oh my God, did this person die? You click on it and you see Denzel. Oh, from over there, I thought he was gone, but now I know that he's okay. You know, it's just pops me every time, because I'm like, well, at least for the time being, time is still on that person's side, whoever's getting tweeted about or whoever's trending. I think it's true. Yeah, Denzel Washington, you know, truly one of the few actors, like we've said here before on the Xtreme Movie Show, that there's not a movie of his that we probably wouldn't like. Some we like more than others. We haven't covered them at all, so we wanted to definitely get a few of our favorite ones in there and some interesting ones. We went more the 90s version rather than the later or earlier. My watching experience goes back to the early 80s with Carbon Copy, and him being a black guy who can't play basketball and says to his white father, who didn't realize he had a son out of wedlock, says, what, because I'm black you expect me to play basketball? Ever since then I said, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm gonna keep my eye on him, and Denzel's done nothing but entertain me, and he's just phenomenal, and we want to root for him. So more power to Denzel in this movie. Yeah, I agree with both you guys. Great film. Check it out. It's very enjoyable. For RDV and Professor Pixel, everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, check out some of the other stuff that we did. We recently just started wrapping up Twin Peaks Season 2. We're getting ready to drop the last episode of that. We're doing Fire Walk with Me, the movie, before going on to Season 3. We got some other stuff coming up, and we'll be going live Tuesday night for our next thing, so check us out then too. Also, we're getting into Halloween season. We're going to be trying to do maybe a few odds and ends here that we're going to just drop. So if there's any particular things that you want us to cover, any suggestions you may have, let us know. We'll be sure to take that under serious advisement, because we're amping up for our favorite time of the year, Halloween time, aka movie time. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.